Hi guys, Pam Warrior Australia here with a new take on the immunisation debate. Now we all know that the government is currently telling people who disagree with vaccination of their child that they are ignorant and that they just don't have access to the real facts. That any discounting of the safety or efficacy of vaccination is due to lack of scientific evidence or understanding. That there is indisputable scientific evidence that vaccines are safe and effective. And of course, if you don't vaccinate your child, you will be punished. You will have your rights taken away. And just to be sure we can force you to comply with our dictatorship, we will take your child's rights away too. That is, your child will not be allowed to attend daycare or school. We will do the most damaging thing anyone can do to a child and isolate them socially. Now, if anyone from government is going to go on the attack and try and throw the book at me, I suggest you keep watching and you will see that it is the people who are now about to start throwing the book you wrote, right back at you. Now, a lot of people will say that there is no argument against vaccination. And the government actually puts up information on the internet to convince people that any argument against vaccination is comprised of myths and untruths and falsities. So instead of going head on into an argument with the government facts, let's take a closer look at their facts. Now, as you would notice, the title of this video is Government Claims that Human Fetuses Have Been Used in Cell Lines to Produce Vaccines. Well, this is actually using the government's own words. It's right there on their website. So before we go on, I will just explain that I am using the government's own words to highlight their propaganda, their spin, and their bullying of people to make them do something they don't want to do. In this free country, of course. So, to understand the way the government is using propaganda to brainwash people, let's just quickly think about Wittgenstein. Now, this guy, you can look him up on the web. He is a famous philosopher who developed a theory of language games. Now, through this you can show how some social groups use words and phrases to exclude other social groups and gain control over them, by basically generating propaganda, much like the government. As you can see here, the government has a whole department within the Prime Minister and Cabinet called Behavioural Economics, and their role is to do research on how to brainwash people to do things the government wants them to do. Visit the site and learn how they are discovering ways to brainwash you and force you to do things you wouldn't normally do. Just type in www.dpmc.gov.au and go to policy, behavioural comments. If you can't find it, then leave a comment and I will pop a direct link up. So, now we are aware that the government is trying to brainwash us to gain control over our behaviour. Let's have a look at what the government is actually saying about vaccination. Let's go to the Government Department of Health website. Immunise propaganda page. Now, we will check out what they have to say about immunisation. Let's just go to the myths about immunisation. Now, as you will see, this page is intended to give health professionals information to help the government to brainwash people if they have an argument against immunising their child. Now, here is where we can see the brainwashing and propaganda through the use of manipulating language at work. Note, they say myths and realities. So immediately, they are using language to say, if you have an argument we can't refute, we will just tell you that you are ignorant and it's a myth. By using the term realities, they are saying that only what they say is true and any argument is not real. Good thing it's working actually, because the government is spending quite a few $1 million on this brainwashing approach. Now here, you see the PDF version of the propaganda. It states that the belief that vaccines are unsafe is a myth, and then goes on to actually say, yes, they are unsafe, but uses language to trick the mind of the person reading it. Let's see. it actually does state right there under the facts that no pharmacologic agent, including vaccines, can be considered 100% safe. Doesn't matter about the however. That just leads off into the propaganda twisting of that initial statement that, yes, you are right, vaccines are not safe. To put this in context, not everyone is going to die from measles, but the government will say that the risk that someone might is enough to be very worried about this disease, right? So just think about this, and then think about their admission that vaccines are not safe. So is the statement, vaccines are not safe, a myth? I would say even the government admits this is not a myth. Now here you see the myth that vaccines contain foreign proteins. And again, you see that it can't be a myth because the government actually states that, yes, this is true. And again, the myth that vaccines are contaminated with foreign viruses. Well, again, the government admits this is not a myth. And again, yes, vaccines do contain toxic additives. Now, if anyone is stating that I'm telling people lies and falsities, then I suggest they go and have a look at the government's own propaganda. They are just twisting the words around to make people think the facts are just stories, when in reality, the government is telling stories to misrepresent the facts. It's right there, right on their own publication. They are saying it right there in print, and I'm not making it up. Now, here's a doozy. The government admits that, yes, vaccines are cultured on cell lines from aborted fetuses. They even tell you that the fetuses were actually aborted just for this use. That is, they aborted 3 humans just to use their cells. It's right there in the 3rd paragraph on page 12 of the Myths and Concerns about Vaccinations. So what do we make of all this? Well, if you go to the Government Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet and look at the behavioural economics, you will see that their intention is to brainwash you into changing your behaviour. It's right there. It's written in a very seductive way, so that it doesn't come right out and say, we are brainwashing you. But if you have a closer look, like just under why we need a behavioural economics team, you will see they used it to do things like get people to stop smoking, not so bad. They used it to get people to start superannuation accounts, and they used it to get people to bypass the professional guidance of a tax agent and go direct to the ATO and give the government more information about themselves without knowing it. So my advice is to go to the government's immunisation website and have a bit more of a closer look. I have not raised any information other than what the government is actually saying. You will see that they are actually countering their own so-called medical and scientific evidence. The admission is on page 24, that vaccines can in fact cause or spread the diseases they are supposed to prevent. It's pretty obvious if you read more carefully. So when you are told you are misinformed, ask the public servant, the doctor, the nurse, well, can you please direct me to a good information source that will give me proper information? Because the Government Health Department's website about immunisation is obviously giving me misinformation.